10 years before, the bestseller, Michelle Remembers, told the story of a young woman who had traced the source of her unhappiness to repressed memories of being satanically abused by her family. Soon, newspapers and magazines were full of stories of abuse at the hands of satanic cults. Stories involving cannibalism, human sacrifice, blood rituals. The abuse was so terrible, some therapists said, that it caused children to develop multiple personalities as a defense against the pain. Then television joined in.
Magazine 2020.
The Geraldo Rivera Special.
By 1988, when Geraldo Rivera's highly rated special on Satanism was broadcast, satanic ritual abuse was considered one of the leading causes of multiple personality disorder, or MPD.
But we are certain that Satanism exists. To some, it's a religion. To others, it's the practice of evil in the devil's name.
Geraldo invited experts in MPD who firmly believed that many of their patients were survivors of satanic cults.
Here in Chicago, a group of well-known therapists from all over the country had the courage to share horror stories.
We're talking about people in some cases who are coming to us as patients who were raised in satanic cults from the time they were born.
I have letters in my file from over 40 states in the United States and several provinces of Canada and one from England with very similar data.
If just a tiny bit of it is true, it's appalling, and there's a need for somebody to do something.
Part of the power of the cult, both with the individual and with the others around it, is its ability to induce fear.
Dr. Bennett Braun became a leading spokesman on the connection between MPD and ritual abuse.
It needs to be done. It needs to be looked at.
It was to Dr. Braun and his colleague Roberta Sachs of Chicago that Mary had turned for diagnosis and treatment. Mary's reasons for admission, according to her hospital records, read, "Patient is a victim of satanic ritualistic abuse. Diagnosis of MPD." Mary's vague fears of having been abused in a cult now received the stamp of professional certainty. She was surprised to discover, she said, that her doctors seemed to know more about her family's history than she did.
Roberta Sachs came in and told me that victims throughout the country had identified me as the fifth-generation cult, that we were high up in the cult, that we were cult royalty.
Who's we?
My family, my parents, my sisters, and I.
Once hospitalized, Mary began regular therapy sessions with Dr. Braun and Roberta or Bobby Sachs.
Most of the sessions were about memory, and many of the sessions were with my husband, Joe. He would come to the sessions, and the two of us would sit down, and they would ask questions about, you know, who we knew from church, who was in the people in the school district, what I knew about their personal life, who we socialized with, trying to get more and more information about the cult. And
but is this a treatment, or was this an investigation?
It felt like an investigation, and in fact, oftentimes I would say to Bobby, all you want is information from me. And she'd say, no, you know, we're concerned at getting that for you to get better. But if I didn't have any information, they didn't have any time for me, especially Dr. Braun.
Dr. Braun prescribed the medication. He put Mary on a variety of medications, among them Halcyon, Klonopin, Xanax, Prozac, and on experimentally high doses of the heart medication Inderol. Heavily medicated, Mary says she lived in fear.
They told me that I had already been programmed that if I divulged the secrets from the cult, that I would self-destruct. And that my programming had just been turned on at age 39.
How did they know that?
Because they were the experts. They were experts. They said, we've been studying this for 15 years. We've done research. You know, this phenomena is happening all over the world. We're the experts. We've written books. We give lectures. People come to our hospital. Other doctors come to our hospital and are trained by us because we are the experts.
In fact, Mary's doctors were considered leading experts in their field. In November of 1994, Dr. Braun was honored at the annual conference of the International Society for the Study of Multiple Personality and Dissociation.
We owe a tremendous debt of gratitude to Dr. Braun.
Most of the big names in the field were there. Gloria Steinem was keynote speaker and guest of honor.
And the burden for keeping all of this afloat was Dr. Braun's absolutely far beyond the contribution of anybody else in the field or the society.
I want to assure everybody that Rush intends to continue its commitment to ongoing professional education in the field of dissociation. We are currently...
It was because of her doctor's reputations, Mary says, that she persevered in her treatment, despite her fears and her growing misgivings.
I had doubts all along the way. My journal is just full of statements, you know, this can't be true, this is a nightmare, I've made this up. I mean, my whole life, my whole world had been turned upside down at that point. Here, you know, I go from being this teacher and having a normal life and doing normal things to a cult royalty.
In an educational video, Dr. Sachs explained,
very few patients who have been ritually abused come in and say, I've been ritually abused, you know, and I've been through this torture and that torture, and I've been pregnant this many times and aborted this many times and forced to participate in cannibalism, and on and on and on. On the contrary, these people do everything they can to deny the existence of that. We're trying to help.
Dr. Sachs explained in her records what was wrong with Mary. Mary had an estimated 15 developed child alters, some with twins, and a system with 7 cult alters, but was unaware of their existence. Mary was encouraged to cut off contact with most family members and friends outside the hospital. Meredith had not seen her friend in months.
She was lost to us totally. We had no idea where she was.
She contacted Mary's husband, Joe.
I asked if we could visit her, and he said no. And I said, well, how about if I can call her, send her a card, whatever. He said, no, you may have no contact with her at all. None of her friends could have contact. We couldn't talk to her, she couldn't talk to us. This was the doctor's orders, and that's the way it was going to be.
Mary was cut off.
I had no way to test my reality. There were a lot of nurses and things that I went to and I said, you know, is this reality? And they all reinforced, yes, it was, you know, that I was really in the best of care, and that, you know, this was such a new field. And we were always being told we were the pioneers. We were on the cutting edge of this field, and that what they were doing with us would shape the treatment of MPDs in future generations.
Multiple personality disorder. We've all seen it dramatized on television or...
Even though it was controversial, Dr. Braun's work was considered to be on the cutting edge of treatment for MPD.
There's just one facility devoted solely to its treatment. And as Channel 5's Rick Salinger reports, it's here in Chicago. Rick?
Ron and Carol, it's located in that canyon of condominiums along Sheridan Road north of Hollywood. Dr. Bennett Brown founded the Dissociative Disorders Unit 1 year ago as part of Rush Presbyterian St. Luke's Medical Center. Meet Pat.
I'm 32. I'm married. Have 2 children.
By outward appearances, she is normal, but inside are dozens of different people. Where would Pat be without this unit?
I wouldn't be alive. Chances are my children and husband wouldn't be alive either.
Pat Burgess was one of the first patients on the unit in 1986. She arrived after having been in a depression for 3 years, following the difficult birth of her second son. When a social worker diagnosed her with MPD, she sought help at Rush.
These were the experts. They were in a very well-respected teaching institution. I turned to that teaching institution for state-of-the-art medical care, cutting-edge medical care. I didn't turn to them for fringe therapy, some goofy, controversial crap.
What do you hear her say?
That the hurting is over.
Dr. Braun often treated me like his star patient. I would have to teach other residents and doctors and media people about multiple personality disorder.
Who's there?
Sarah.
How old are you, Sarah?
I'm 5.
I was supposed to switch personalities for the camera.
Who's this?
Karen.
Karen, you don't seem too happy.
I'm not.
Dr. Braun and I kind of rehearsed that a few times to make sure that it looked believable for the interviewer. I was supposed to talk about how if it wasn't for Dr. Braun, I wouldn't be alive.
Where would Pat be without this unit?
I wouldn't be alive.
Patty says that Dr. Braun both pushed her to remember things that didn't occur and then believed her stories. After a year in the hospital, Patty traced the satanic history of her family back to the 17th century.
Satanic cult practices have been passed down through the paternal side of the family.
Dr. Braun asked me to write up something to do a presentation at his conference. It was supposed to be one of my alter personalities, giving a history about the cult.
The satanic activity has been genealogically traced to a southern Slavic region of Europe during the Medieval Ages, when her forebears were the supreme monarchs of the blood royal.
I believed that I was a satanic high priestess, that I was controlling a satanic cult in a 9-state region.
Revealed was the history of
I took it deadly serious.
Satanic worship, torturous human sacrifice, cannibalism, and
I think all reality and fantasy just blended together. I was drugged, I was hypnotized, and I was mentally ill.
She also knew nothing of the...
But I was told that, until I hit bottom, until I dug all of this stuff out, I would never get better, and I would never have a chance for any kind of a future for my children.
Mary says she too was told she had to persevere in her treatment for the sake of her son.
I was told that I was the only one in 5 generations who was given the insight to break this cycle, and if I wanted my son to live and not become, a cultist or to die, then I was responsible for his life.
A turning point in Mary's treatment came when Dr. Sachs asked her to attend a consultation with one of the most important experts in cult programming techniques, Dr. Corey Hammond, professor of medicine at the University of Utah. Dr. Hammond lectured often on the origins and practices of the cult.
Use a very, very systematic brainwashing that comes out of experimentation from Nazi doctors and experimentation in the intelligence community with mind control research, and involves medical technology and is very, very sophisticated. And is systematic.
In one of his lectures, not available to the public, Hammond described his theories about the origins of satanic cult programming, starting with a Jewish collaborator in the Nazi death camps. His name was Greenbaum, alias Dr. Green.
Some of the people then doing the mind control research were Satanists, the Nazi doctors, and they have used all the technology. And in fact, the kid who came over, whose name was Greenbaum, changed his name and Americanized it to Green, and got an MD in the state of New York and became known as Dr. Green.
and he's at the center of this process, and is still around. He's around mid-60s and still alive.
According to Dr. Hammond, Dr. Green developed a secret code based on the Greek alphabet, which the cult used to program its members. Examples: Alpha represented general programming. Beta was sexual programming. Delta was the program for killing. Gamma was the one that therapists should look out for. It was a deception program, teaching misinformation and trickery. Dr. Hammond evaluated Mary.
Is there any part of Mary who knows anything about alpha, beta, delta, or theta?
He hypnotized me and put me in trance, and then he asked me about the Greek alphabet and asked me to name any of the Greek letters of the alphabet that I knew, and I named a few. And then he asked me for the gamma erasure code, and I didn't know what he was talking about.
Mary remembers being told that her gamma program was still active. That meant she was still loyal to the cult, and possibly a danger to the staff and other patients.
But I believe that quite a few of them that we're treating are still involved in cults, and that we should not be treating them if they are. And that's a cruel, terrible thing to say, and that is a danger to them and a danger to us.
Mary says that she was told that besides being a cult plant and a spy, she was now strongly suspected of having ritually abused and programmed her son. He had to be evaluated. She had to be deprogrammed. Dr. Sachs recommended that the work be done in Houston by her colleague, Dr. Judith Peterson.
Hi, Judy. Hi. It's good to see you today.
The two therapists referred patients to each other and had collaborated on several training programs.
What you're about to see is a role play of an abreaction that
Peterson, a licensed psychologist and Ph.D., was clinical director of a special unit at Spring Shadows Glen, a private psychiatric hospital in Houston, Texas. A small building surrounded by trees, the hospital was nicknamed Club Med by its patients. Mary would stay there for 2 years. Some of her therapy sessions were taped. In this session, Dr. Peterson is to Mary's right.
Did somebody come out? Did you come all the way out?
By the time I got down to Houston, they didn't care what had happened to me. I was identified as a perpetrator and treated as a perpetrator.
Come on out. She knows she's on it, and the parts come all the way out. They're in charge of the accident they're responsible for.
They told me that there was someone, some cult altar, deep within my system that knew the plan about killing my husband and my son. And that all I needed to do was to let that altar surface.
Come out that knows the plan. For Joe and mine. And Mary. It's not for me. Okay, for Joe and mine.
By then, Mary says, she believed it all and tried hard to provide some useful information.
They will look like an accident.
They would say, you know, let them come up, bring them up. Let the real cult loyal altars come up and give this plan.
Heard that. What else? What else? What else is dangerous to you? What's the plan? What's the plan? Who's going to kill Joe? Who's got the job? Who'd you get the job to?
I was told that I would go to prison because they knew that I had killed people and that I had abused these children, and I was part of this international network.